You can start, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining the call. My name is Adeshola. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. I understand the call is being recorded, so if it's okay, we can please stay on mute. Throughout the session, we can have our video on. That's optional if you want to, you can. If not, you can switch it off. It's optional for your videos, but just to ensure we are on mute because of the recording. And I'll be a bit flexible as well with questions. If you have any questions as I go, you can, just raise your hand, interrupt. I'm happy to answer you. But if you have too much questions coming, we need to pen them until the end of the session just to ensure we're able to cover all the slides. So that's just the housekeeping. And the topic tonight that will be taking us through is Introduction to Agile, Kanban, and Scrum, as well as Waterfall software development methodologies. And my name is Adeshola Oshin. I'm also a Scrum Master. So to get us started, apologies, we had started a little bit late to get more people join the call. So for this topic tonight, I'll taking us briefly through Agile software development methodologies. I'll be touching on what is Scrum, what is Kanban, differences between Scrum and Kanban. Also, a bit of intro into Waterfall software development methodology. So this is what we'll be covering tonight. And at the end of it, we'll have the Q&A. If you have any questions, we can go through after the slides. But like I said, you can just raise your hand if you have any question as I go through the slides. I'm happy to answer us. Hopefully, we won't have too much to ensure we cover all the slides. So to get us started, what is Agile? Agile is a set of practices based on values and principles that encourage iterative development and collaboration between self-organizing teams. I want us to, put some keywords at the back of our mind as we talk about Agile, and that includes the values and principles. Agile, is based on values and principles. We'll cover those as part of this training as well. But it's so important to understand what the values and principles of Agile are. And also iterative development as well is something we have to bear in mind because we'll be hearing this a lot during our training, and collaboration as well. We cannot overemphasize the need for collaboration with Agile, as well as a self-organizing team. So all of these points are key points for us to bear in mind when we talk about Agile. And also to note that Agile, it's a mindset change. It is a philosophy and not a framework. So Agile itself is a philosophy, but it's got framework, linked to it, subsets of Agile. But to know that Agile itself is a philosophy and not a framework. So this is basically what Agile refers to. And again, like I said, it's based on values and principles, encourage iterative development and collaboration between self-organizing teams. So we go into details as we go cover, the slides as we go further. So this is basically what Agile means in a nutshell. And when is the best time to use Agile methodology? So we're familiar with Agile and the Waterfall. So for us to understand when it's best for us to use Agile, what sorts of projects is Agile best over Waterfall development methodology? So the first point here, it talks about when new changes that need to be implemented very frequently exist. So that takes us back to the point I said earlier about iterative development, because with iterative development is a cyclical, process approach where the software are being developed in a cyclical approach, and which is where we refer to that in Scrum as a sprints, and it's just the fact that Agile encourages, to be broken down into smaller bits, and by doing so, at the end of each iteration, for instance, there is always, a software that has been developed that is shippable, that can be used by the clients, by the customer. So where we have a big project, and of course, we don't want to complete the whole project before releasing to the customer, we need to do it in small bits. Agile is best in this instance, which is when new changes can be implemented. So, when we have a big project which has been broken down and we get feedback on that project. So at the back of that feedback from the clients, there's something that needs to be introduced, that needs to be, applied. So Agile helps us to make such changes very frequently. We don't need to wait for a whole year to complete a project before we implement any change. Agile does not work that way, but it helps us to make changes very frequently at the end of every iteration. So again, complex and bigger projects can be divided and combined later as parts of increments. So like I said, when we have a big project, which we want to split into smaller projects, smaller chunks, so Agile is best, software to use in that instance, because it breaks down that project and we are able to produce an increment in bits, which are then being added together to make the bigger projects at the end of the period, which might last for a year. But within that 1 year, there's been increments that has been delivered in bits over the period of time. So long-term goals are no bound on requirements. Again, long-term goals means we have a long-term project, but it can be broken down and there is no bound on requirement because it welcomes change along the line. So there's no definite requirements from the start of the project because requirement can change along the line. So no limits on time and budget. Frequent changes throughout your development cycle, which is what I said earlier. Throughout the cycle, we can make changes at any point in time, which is part of what Agile encourages. It allows you to make changes, to change requirements throughout the development cycle. Again, quick launch of the product to the market without waiting for the whole product to be built. So like I said earlier, we don't need to wait for the whole project to be completed. Maybe we want to build the house, for instance. We don't need to wait until all the 4 flats, the 4 bedrooms, everything are complete. But once a room is complete, that one room can be released to the clients, and then we keep improving and improving until the whole project or the whole house is completely built. So Agile works best in these instances as well. And when work is simple, predictable, and fully defined, it will probably be right to utilize Waterfall. So in this is a bit of difference between Agile and Waterfall. Remember, from this point I've highlighted earlier, for Agile, it's good to have a big project, a complex project, which from the start of the project, we don't even know what the endpoint is, which is where the changes are being welcomed. But where we have a change which is simple over a short period of time, it is predictable. We can fully define what the project entails. So in that instance, Waterfall would be a better approach. So it's just one of the differences between Agile and Waterfall. So when we have a project which is complex, which is big, will take us a long time to complete, and want to make changes along the way, Agile will be the best approach for that kind of project. So which is just a bit of difference between Agile and Waterfall. So what are the principles of Agile? Like I did mention earlier, Agile is based on values and principles. So these are the 12 principles of Agile, which I'll be talking us through one by one. And we need to bear this in mind because this is what, like I said, Agile is based on the principles. This is what Agile is based on. The practices of Agile, what we do as being Agile, are based on these 12 principles. So the first point says, satisfy customers through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Satisfying customer. Like I said, Agile helps us to break a bigger project into smaller chunks. So by doing that, at the end of each iteration, we are able to deliver to customer, we're able to develop an increment, which is potentially releasable to the clients, which means at the end of each iteration, which we can refer to as sprints in Scrum, the team is able to develop something which is usable, which is valuable as well. So in doing that, we're able to release something to the clients. So think about a period that will take us like a whole year to complete, but with Agile, it helps us to break it down in a week sprint or a 2-week sprint or a 3-week, 4-week sprint maximum, we're able to deliver something to the client which is valuable, which is workable, which is working software. So this is what Agile is based on, because it helps us to satisfy customers early and continuously we deliver valuable software to the clients. So that's the first principle of Agile. And the second one talks about welcome changing requirements, even late in development. So again, I've mentioned about change requirements because, for a big project that is planned for a whole year, before the 1 year runs out, there might be changes in the marketplace. So with Agile, when any change comes into place, we are able to implement that for the current sprints at that point in time. So any changes, any feedback from the clients, as an Agile team, we are able to take that in at any point in time. Change requirements is welcomed, is acceptable. And Agile awareness changes for the customer's competitive advantage. So because of, competitors in the marketplace, something new has come out from what we planned initially. As for an Agile team, we're able to implement that change, which is what makes it valuable for the clients as well. It's not rigid, it's flexible, which is why it's Agile. Thinking about the word agility, it's flexible. So it's not anything that any change from the client, from the customer, from business is acceptable for the team to pick up on. And the next point talks about deliver working software frequently. Again, thinking about the iteration as well. So because we are able to make an increment, which we are able to release to the customer. So frequently we do that in Agile. We release to the customer. We don't need to wait for the old 1 year project, 2 years project before we're able to deliver something. But frequently, at the end of every iteration, there's something valuable. There's a working software to deliver to the clients. As well, business stakeholders and developers must work together daily throughout the projects. So that takes me back to my points earlier about collaboration that I said when I was talking about Agile. Collaboration is very key in Agile. So the business stakeholders, developers, every day, there is this collaboration. Nobody is in the dark. Everybody is kept up to date with information in terms of what is happening. And we can show this in terms of our sprint board, for instance. At our ceremonies, for instance, as well, daily Scrum, developers are giving their updates, stakeholders are, aware. The sprint board is transparent. Anybody can go on there to see, to have access to the information at which stage the project is, what's happening at part time. Everybody have access to that information. So there is that continuous collaboration with it from the business stakeholders and developers as well. So that's the collaboration bit that I mentioned earlier as one of the key points to bear in mind when we talk about Agile, as well as build projects around motivated individuals, provide them with the right environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. So for a Scrum team, trust is very, very important. And also for the team to be motivated, because as well I mentioned about self-organizing team, because we want to ensure the team are well motivated. They have the environment they need and it's working. It's not a broken environment that might cause blockers or impediments, but just to have all they need at their, disposal, and for them to get their work done and being able to self-manage as well. So which is what this point refers to. And the face-to-face is the most efficient and effective method of conveying information. So I'm within a development team. So this used to be what Agile is, and it's still, but with COVID and work from home, we now have the flexibility of working from home. But ideally, because of the continuous collaboration, face-to-face is the most effective way of doing that. And you realize that even with working from home as well, there is still that continuous communication, collaboration via, various mediums. It could be Teams, it could be Google Meets. There's still that contact, which again encourages collaboration. And you would imagine, to have a good communication, it's best to have it face-to-face than over the phone or something. But it's just something for us to again bear in mind as part of the principles of Agile as well. And working software is a primary measure of progress. So for Agile, because we understand we are delivering in bits, in smaller chunks. So which is why, which is the most valuable part of Agile, because, and that's the way to measure progress as well, because at the end of each iteration, there's a working software, there's an increment being developed that is workable, that is valuable for the clients to use. So this is basically, I mean, how progress is being measured as well within the team. And Agile processes promotes sustainable development. So which is why, I mean, for anything the team will be working on, however the team will be starting, it would be nice to start at a sustainable pace without overcommitting or undercommitting, but to commit to something that we know we can sustain, we can work with for a period of time without being overwhelmed or without, I mean, undercommitting, but just at a pace where we can work with continuously. So the sponsor, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. So for, again, we can talk about the sprints as well. If a team starts out with because for a sprint, the maximum is a 4-week sprint. So if a team is choosing a 1-week sprint, we need to ensure we are continuing that project on a 1-week sprint. Are we choosing a 2-week sprint? That needs to be sustained all through the projects. It could be 3 weeks or 4 weeks maximum. It's just to ensure whatever we are starting with is the pace that we can continue with. We don't want to start a sprint with a 1-week sprint, and then midway through, we are changing it to 2 weeks or a 3-week sprint. Even though, yeah, there are instances for us to do that, but it's just to start out at a pace that we can sustain throughout the project as long as we can. And the 10th point, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Again, this cannot be overemphasized because we are working from designs, which again, we need to ensure we are working closely to what has been provided as a Scrum team. And the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing team. Again, self-organizing team, I've mentioned that previously. So we need to ensure they are equipped with what they need to get their work done, and this also motivates them. So when they have these environments, they are being trusted, motivated, we'll get the best out of them. We don't want a team that we need to, tell everything to do, but to ensure they've been trained and they are able to self-manage, self-organize, and get their work done with very little support. And lastly, at regular intervals, the team inspects and adapts, because we understand we are making changes, and most importantly, we want to improve. So for us to ensure continuous improvements, we need to be able to inspect and see what we've done previously, how can we get better, what has worked, what hasn't worked for us. And at the end of that, we're able to come out with an action plan for improvement. So whatever we've come out with, then we adapt that to the subsequent sprints. So this is done regularly amongst, the team, where we need to inspect on what we've done and adapt the best practices to the next sprints. So this takes us through the 12 principles of Agile. We ask for us to have this, to understand what each of these means. It would help us a long way as we, work together as a Scrum team. And the next slide are the values of Agile, which are also refers to the Agile Manifesto. And these are 4 valid points. And from these points, what we are talking about here basically is the fact that we have some actions on the right and some actions on the left. And what separates the left from the right is the over, which is highlighted here. And this is just highlighting a better way of developing software. And the point here is the fact that the actions on the right are valuable, they are important. However, there is more value on the items on the left. And the first point talks about individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So remember, I've talked a bit about collaboration. So this is where that bits come into place. So as an individual, we interact a lot. So this helps the team to work better. Even though we need a process, we need tools as well to help us motivate the team. However, there is more value on the individuals and the interaction, the collaboration. So even though the tools are there, but we still need to collaborate together as a team. So which is why the individuals and interactions are more valuable over processes and tools. So the individuals here talks about the Scrum team, every team member. So we are all valuable. I mean, our opinions, our thoughts counts, and the collaboration as well is more important as well. So that's the first Agile value. And the second value talks about working software over comprehensive documentation. So in saying that, I mean, I've talked a bit about working software, which has been delivered frequently, which has been delivered to customer early as well. So there is more value on this over long, comprehensive, overwhelming documentation. So with Agile, there is documentation, but it's very minimal. And this documentation is as small that can fit into user story. Is just to have enough information for developers to be able to get the work done and be able to deliver an increment. So we don't need to have, we need documentation, but maybe not comprehensive. Yeah, it's going to be comprehensive, but not as massive, big, long documents of about 10, 20 pages. But the more valuable thing is the working software. So which is why this is more valuable over the item on the right. I mean, the working software is more valuable over the comprehensive documentation. And the next Agile value is the customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So the team needs to collaborate, but as well, there has to be collaboration with the customer as well. We need to get constant feedback from customers about this working software that has been delivered. So the customer's idea, customer's opinion is valuable, and not just over the, contract that has been negotiated. So again, the item on the right is valuable over that on the left. On the left, valuable over the item on the right. And lastly, responding to change over following a plan. I've mentioned about change, even in late development, Agile welcomes that. So as an Agile team, it's more valuable for us to respond to change than having to follow a plan that has been written out 3-4 months ago, because if we need to be agile, we need to be flexible, and we need to be able to welcome change at any point during the development process, which is why it's valuable for Agile to respond to change over following a plan. So plan has the potential to change and not just being rigid or something we cannot interrupt or make changes to as we go through development process. So those are the values of Agile, as well as the principles of Agile as well, which is the basis upon which Agile is being established. And the next slide, before we go into Scrum, do we have any questions so far? As we've talked a bit about the Agile, do we have any question, or can just carry on? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Right. Okay. I can't see any name now. Can anyone just unmute and?
We have some people raising their hands anyway. So, okay. OA, please.
Good evening. So my question is there any way that you can break down what a sprint is, like in a layman's term, like, in a simple way? Thank you.
Yeah, a sprint in a layman way is a container for so many events. And for a sprint within a team, it depends on what the team set out to for their duration. Sprints could be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or maximum is 4-week sprints. And during the sprints is where the changes are being done. I will get to that in a minute, but it's just basically is a duration for the team to work on a software and be able to deliver an increment for the clients. There's this part of what I will get to as well as part of this training, which will give us more details about the sprints.
Okay, Mohammed.
Hi, Mohammed.
Oh, sorry, please. I just want to ask you just about the Agile and the Waterfall methodology. So for the industrial standard, I want to ask you which one is preferable? Like which one is more preferable? Is it the Agile or the Waterfall?
They are both preferable. They are both valuable, but it depends on the projects and the organization as well. So either way, but like I mentioned earlier, there are some projects where Agile is more valuable. For instance, where you have a big project that might take a long time to deliver, Agile is the best approach for that kind of project, because it allows project to be broken down, and at each of the chunks, there's a valuable being delivered to the clients. So the client does not need to wait for 1 year, 2 years for the project to be delivered before they have an increment or a working software. So in that instance, Agile would be a better approach. So it depends on the project, on the business, and what it involves, basically.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does say, but I just want to know, like, which one is more, is there one more advantageous than other? Like
everything, they both have their pros and cons. But yeah,
Okay.
it depends on what the business wants to adopt and if they're ready for them to, on that approach. So any business that wants to approach the Agile must be ready with the practices, with the principles and everything involved, as well as Waterfall as well. It's got its own advantage as well, which again is part of what I will cover as part of this training as we go through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enola?
I'm sorry, there is this slide that I missed before the last one you show.
Which one is this? Is it Principles of Agile or the
Yeah, this one. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So do you have any question about it, Enela? Or Enela, is there any question about it? Okay, I think just come back from it. Adenike.
Okay, so hello. I remember you mentioned 12 principles of Agile, but it seems like it's just 11 principles that is here. So I don't know if we've missed one out.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh yeah, it's 11 here. Sorry, it should be 12. I would update the slide. I will send to admin. I believe this will be shared with us as well. So I'll get that updated. There are 12 principles of Agile.
All right, thank you.
Apologies about that. Yeah, that must have been cut off from the paste. Wumi.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I just
Hi,
noticed
I'm there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I just noticed the slide after this one. Can you go to the slide? It mentions about budget. No, next one. Somewhere who's talked about Agile is applicable. Yeah, the fourth PowerPoint there. No limits on time and budget. So does that mean where you're implementing an Agile process and then whatever project you're doing within your company, is Agile not going to be possible where in a situation where a budget has been set? Because 9 times out of 10 on projects that I'm aware of, that I've worked on in my sector, it's very rare that we see a project that's got no budget. It's literally almost impossible.
Yeah,
So,
there would be. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just wondering. So does that mean if you have a project that is canned and then they open up again and say this is the budget we have for it, does that mean you cannot implement Agile process on it, methodology?
Yeah, this point takes us back to thanks, Adon. This point takes us back to where, with Agile, it welcomes change. So, when we start a project that has been planned out for 1 year, for instance, which obviously with Agile, that will be broken down into smaller chunks, into sprints, and there'll be delivery over a period of time. But with the change bits coming in, so because the market position might change, there could be new, release from the competitors, which your team also wants to adopt that. So because of the new adoption, because of the new innovation in the marketplace, which we want to adopt, so there should be that flexibility that, this is something that we haven't planned for. It might cost us more, it might take us longer than the 1 year that we thought this project would last us. So in that case, the fact that we are welcoming change makes us to budget to be kind of open to changes that might be more valuable to the client than what we thought initially. Does that make sense, Wumi? Hi, Wumi. Okay, you're mute again. Can't hear you. I think we have one more person.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We have one more person raising his or her hand. Nilolawa.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask the question that the last person asked, so it's fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So I believe that's okay. Galaxy A52S. That does not have any name.
Hi, it's Sandra. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening.
I'm not too sure if you answered this or it came up previously, but who would kind of set what principle like Agile or Waterfall you would use? Would it
That
be
would
the
be
Scrum
the-
Master or would it be the product owner or like who
That's
would?
That's the business themselves. The organization
Oh, okay.
determine if they're going down the Agile or Scrum and Waterfall.
Okay, well, let's say they start off as Waterfall, but then you see a need for it to change to
Transition.
Agile. Would that be something that you would bring up, or would they change it? Or
It will be the business decision to do that.
okay,
Yeah, I mean, as there could be suggestion, but it depends. The business would make decisions to transition to Waterfall to Agile. That's the business decision to take.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I think we have one more before we carry on. Jibril. Hi, Jibril. Okay, Kayode. Right, you're mute in case you're talking, Jibril or Kayode. I think we can carry on now.
All right, thanks.
Okay, hello.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was muted before. This is Jibril.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can
go
you
on.
hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right, I wanted to ask, thank you so much for your presentation. I wanted to ask about, is it possible between from the start of a project to the end to have a combination of the two? Maybe at some point they started with the Agile and at some point change to Waterfall, or either way?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, you will still find as well, even some businesses today are still working with a bit of Agile, which is Waterfall and Agile. So yeah, there is that possibility of, even my company, I would say there's still a bit of Waterfall, even though the business feels thinks they're Agile, but you still find a bit of Waterfall in there. So you can, that's possible, definitely. And as well, there could be a transition from Agile to Waterfall or vice versa. So yeah, there's that possibility as well.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Friday, lastly, so we can move on. Hi, Friday. Okay, I think we can carry on now. So that takes us through.
Sorry, can you hear me? I'm trying to unmute. All right, so from experience, right, I know the industry's trend for the last 10, 15 years has been to move away from Waterfall and to embrace Agile methodology or approach. So what do you advise from what from your experience, what you've worked on? What do you advise? Is Waterfall going down the drain? Are we? What do you advise?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I said earlier, they both have their advantage, their pros and cons. And I've been Agile so far. And from my experience as part of an Agile Scrum team, I think Agile seems to be working. It is working, definitely. And like you also mentioned rightly, most businesses are transitioning to Agile now. So I think it's a way to go, if that makes sense. But it doesn't mean Waterfall is totally bad. It's got its own benefits as well, its own advantage. But Agile still kind of works well in terms of software development. Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So thanks guys. So we just carry on quickly so we can cover the slides. So Neil, I think you asked the question earlier. Still seems like your hand is up.
No, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you for allowing me. Yeah, so I actually did Prince 2 a while back, and one of the things they explained was that time and cost are mostly fixed. So I was like struggling when you said that there's no limit on time and budget. Does it mean that those areas are areas of clashes between Prince 2 and Agile?
Prince 2, is that Waterfall?
Prince 2 Agile. Prince 2 Agile.
Prince 2 Agile.
Yes.
Sorry, Prince 2 is not actually Agile. Prince 2 is project management. It's really on Waterfall.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Waterfall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
okay, thank you.
So one thing to differentiate is project management is to Waterfall as Scrum Master is to Agile. So basically, as a project manager, you work in Waterfall. As a Scrum Master, you work in Agile.
So the one I actually did, they said it was the Agile one, and they were looking at how to tailor Prince 2 in an Agile environment.
Okay, so that's kind of what Adeshola was talking about, is basically like a Agile, right? So like you want to be Agile, but you still want to be Waterfall.
Okay,
so I'll hand over to Adeshola to continue.
Yeah, I think that's because, like I said, even my organization think they're Agile, but we still find a bit of Waterfall. So it still feels like it's the Agile approach where we have the Waterfall bits and it's Agile as well being managed simultaneously.
So, but basically, Agile is flexible on time and cost.
Yes, it is flexible, definitely.
Okay,
because when you want to welcome change, you need to be open to more money. It could be more money, it could be less money, but it's just that there's a chance of, the budget being increasing for the new changes coming on board.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, so we move on.
Sorry, like the last person said, that doesn't mean that you don't have the time limit and you don't have the project. I think so that people don't get you confused. It's only that you are flexible in that aspect than what you had in the Waterfall part.
Thank you. Yes, so that takes us to Scrum. And then what is Scrum? So Scrum is one of the subsets of Agile. So we've talked about Agile in a bit. So for Agile, it has different subsets, which Scrum Kanban is one of them. So as part of this introduction, part of this training, we'll be touching a bit on Scrum and Kanban. So Scrum is just one of the subsets of Agile, and it is a framework. Remember I said earlier that Agile is not a framework, but Scrum Agile has some frameworks, which Scrum is one of them. So it's a framework for developing and sustaining complex products. It is a framework within which people can address complex adaptive problems while productively and creatively delivering products of the highest possible value. So again, you still have that complex problems in there where the project is big, is complex, but it helps us to break it down. And whilst we're doing that, we are productively and creatively delivering products of the highest possible value. And Scrum is lightweight. It is simple to understand and hard to master. And it consists of the Scrum teams, which includes the associated roles. The roles there are the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the dev team. And the dev team comprises of the developers and the QAs. Scrum has its events, which includes the daily Scrum, the sprint planning, sprint review, sprint retrospective, and the sprint backlog refinement session. He's got his artifacts, which includes his product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the product increments, and the rules that bind them together. So this is what Scrum is. And Scrum is based on empirical process control theory, or what is known as empirism. And this asserts that knowledge comes from experience and making decisions based on what is known. So Scrum, like I mentioned about continuous improvements, he helps us to work based on what we know from experience, how we've done it in the past. Can we, implement that again? And it helps us make decisions as well based on what we already know, which is the empirical process control theory, which Scrum is based on. And it also employs an iterative, incremental, and cyclical approach, which is the sprints that we've mentioned earlier, and which we'll go into details as we go further. So this basically tells us what Scrum is. And also Scrum helps us to achieve the following: early feedback. And like I've mentioned previously about sprints, at the end of every sprint, there's an increment, which is working software that can be delivered to customer. And when delivered to customer, we are open to feedback. So Scrum helps us to, at the end of every delivery, we get feedback. And it helps us to minimize risk in responding to change as well, because frequently we are able to welcome change. So there's very less risk for us to do that because we have the opportunity to make changes. And it's helped to increase return on investment because of the changes which is welcome throughout the software, we are able to match up with the new the competitors and also any changes in the marketplace as well. And it increases collaborative development and teamwork as well. And again, Scrum as well as Agile has its own principles, and it's Agile and its values as well, on which they are based. So whilst we have the principles for Agile, we also have principles for Scrum as well. And that's one of them is the empirical process control, which is where we talk about making decisions based on what we already know. And the self-organization as well. Again, we've talked about this previously. The team needs to be self-organized with very little support, which is where they have the environment they need, they have the expertise they need, they have the skills they need to make decisions and get their work done. And the collaboration, which we cannot overemphasize, the exact continuous collaboration with the business stakeholders, with the customers as well. So that's something that's very, very key in Scrum. And the value-based prioritization, which is where we talk about, we have a project, being able to prioritize that and know what we need to work on next, which this is based on value we are giving to customer. We prioritize based on value to customer and to the business. And time boxing as well is very, very key. So with all the ceremonies, all the events, they all have to be time boxed, from the sprints to the other events that takes place during the sprints as well. Time boxing is very, very key. And the athletic development, which is where we talk about the sprints, developing in cyclical approach. So these are the 6 principles of Scrum. And as well as that, Scrum also has its values as well, which is very key for the Scrum team to adopt. There are 5 values of Scrum, which is the courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. So these are the values for the Scrum team to imbibe and ensure it's evidence amongst the team. And the quality talks about Scrum team members have quality to do the right thing and work on solve problems. So as a self-organized team, all team members should be able to pick up a task and be confident or have the courage of being able to complete that task and deliver to the clients. There is, again, collaboration, which, when you get stuck as a Scrum team, being able to reach out for help, but it's just at the fact that everyone is confident or has the courage to pick up any task and the courage to be able to get the work done at any time. And the focus as well, where everyone focuses on the work of the sprints and the goal of the Scrum team. So as a Scrum team, our focus is on the sprint goal. So this is what the team focuses on for the 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever duration the sprint has been planned for. So the team needs to focus on whatever the sprint goal is, and to ensure this has been achieved at the end of the sprints, as well as commitments. People commit to achieving the goals of the sprints as well. Very less distraction, which the role of the Scrum Master then comes in to ensure the team is focused. Any form of distraction is being removed, and to ensure the team members are focusing and committing on getting the sprint goal. Being able to achieve that at the end of the sprints, and any form of distraction is being taken away. Blockers, again, impediments, the Scrum Master would also help in getting those removed, just so that the team can commit and focus on getting the work developed and being able to deliver at the end of the sprints. Respect is also important. One of the values of Scrum. Scrum team members respect each other to be capable and independent people. So we would always find within a team, one of the developers senior dev and a junior dev, but it's just to not let that get into us, but for us to work together and show respect, to understand who each take everybody as an individual and independent people as well, to be able to be capable to get their work done without any form of clash within the team. So that respect bit is very, very key within team members. And we would not say there is no conflict. There would sometimes be conflicts, which again, as a Scrum Master, to ensure any form of conflicts are being removed, to reduce negative energy or any kind of, anything that would impact on the team members being able to get their work done. And openness is very, very key. We've talked about that earlier. The team should be open with their challenges. Any blocker we have, we need to be able to communicate that openly without feeling incapable, but it's just to be open with the issues that we've got within the team, any challenges, to be open with them as well. And that would help anyone gets enough support, and as well be open to the stakeholders, to the customer, so every stakeholders involved are able to understand what the team are with the work at any point in time. So those are the 5 values of Scrum. And 3 pillars of empirism, which I mentioned earlier, are the transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Transparency, I've talked about that, give visibility to the significant aspects of the process to those responsible for the outcome. So stakeholders is visible, have visibility of the project, customers as well, everyone that needs to know as is being able to, visualize what we're working on. And the Scrum board is a good way to get this done. Anybody that goes on our board can see where we are, which is why it's so important to have the board to make it updated at any point in time, to ensure any task we are working on is updated. Do we have 3 more hours to get it done? Is it complete? Do we need to update it as closed? Whatever the case is, to ensure that transparency is there without anyone can understand what stage the project is. Inspection as well, timely check on the progress towards the sprint goal to detect undesirable variances. So again, when we make our project visible, then it helps us to be able to inspect. And with this, again, thinking about our daily Scrum, it helps us to inspect how are we progressing towards the sprint goal? Are we on track? Are there lots of distractions? Are we far off? And then once this has been identified, then we're able to adapt, which in that case, we are adjusting the process as soon as possible to minimize any further deviation or issues. So all of these pillars of Scrum are very, very important for the Scrum team. The transparency, inspection, and the adaptation, they all work side by side. So they are referred to the pillars of Scrum. So this is a simple rules for Scrum. So we have the 3-5-3, which is the 3 roles here, and the 3 roles are here, which is the product owner, the Scrum Master, and developers. So for a Scrum team, would always have these 3 roles. So the product owner is the voice of the customer. They are the ones that communicate the customer's vision, the customer's desire to the team. So they are kind of the middleman between it could be a middlewoman, middle person, basically, between the business, the team, and the clients. So they are the voice of the customer. They are the ones that set the vision and set priority as well. And their opinion needs to be respected as this product owner, because they are the ones that will communicate to the team. So the business needs to respect them as an individual. And as part of the Scrum Rules is the Scrum Master, who is the leader who serves the team and ensures continuous improvements as well. And developers, which includes the keyways, the testers and the developers are themselves. So they are the ones that need to be motivated, to be knowledgeable, capable, and be able to produce a quality working software. And those are the people that needs to be self-organized. They are the ones that have the expertise to get the work done. They are the ones that work within the sprints. So the product owner communicates the client's needs to the business, and the Scrum Master is there to lead the team, who as well as to serve the team as well. So those are the 3 roles in Scrum. and the 5 events here are the, let me move this slightly. The 5 roles events there is the sprint itself, which is a fixed duration, like I said earlier. So the team needs to set out from the start, are we embarking on a 1-week sprint, a 2-week sprint, 3 weeks, 4 weeks maximum? So that's the fixed duration for that sprint, and is a container for other events as well. And the other events includes the sprint planning, which is where the sprint sets the sprint backlog. And the sprint backlog contains the changes that needs to be worked on within the sprints, within the duration of the sprints. So that's the sprint backlog there. And daily scrum, which is where the team comes together every day for 15 minutes at a set time at a fixed location as well for consistency. And which is where we inspect progress towards the sprint goal. So that's a daily setting event there. And a backlog refinements depending on the team as well. Some team does this, some team does not. But for my team, for instance, we have this every week. So whatever has been prioritized in the backlog by the product owner, the team come together to refine those. And in refining them, that means we have to go through those requirements to ensure we have what information we need as this depth, as the Scrum team, to be able to make the changes and to be able to deliver at the end of the sprint. And also at this point is where we have the estimation done, and we assign story points on user stories as well. So that's one of the ceremonies in Scrum. And the sprint review also helps us, product increments to review that. And then this is also when the demo is done to stakeholders at the end of the sprint, where the team would show what they've worked on during the sprints, and we'll get feedback from the stakeholders in terms of the changes. Is it acceptable? Do we need to make slight changes to that? So that's done at the end of every sprint. And the last ceremony for the sprints is the sprint retrospective. We've talked about inspection and adaptation. So this is where we do that. So as a Scrum team, we come together and we retrospectively look into the sprints. What has worked well for us during the sprints? What hasn't worked well? And at the back of that, we create an action plan for improvements, which we then adapt to the new sprint starting. So these are the 5 ceremonies in Scrum, and the 3 artifacts as well, which are the product backlog, and that defines the product goal. The sprint backlog, again, defines the sprint goal for the duration of the sprints, and the product increments. So this is just an overview. When we talk about Scrum, the 3-5-3, so that's the 3 roles in Scrum, the 5 events, and the 3 artifacts. So this is just what sprints or Scrum rules entails. And that takes us to the next slide, the Agile Scrum framework. So with the Agile Scrum framework, again, is just a pictorial representation of the structure, the framework for the Scrum team. So from the top here, we have the product owner, which receive input from executives, from the team, from stakeholders, from the clients and the users. So requirements are being taken from these sets of people, being communicated to the product owner, and product owner would then represent this on the product backlog. And these are ranked list of what's required, the feature stories. So all of these requirements from these executive clients, users have been documented in the product backlog. And these are also prioritized as well. I mentioned value-based prioritization earlier as part of the principles of Scrum. So the requirements are being prioritized in terms of what we need to work on next. So it's a long list of requirements, but it's got to be prioritized. So the topmost requirements, the number 1 here, will be the most priority for the team to work on. And then that's been prioritized in that order. So the last item, number 8, will be the least requirements or the least priority in the product backlog. So the product owner is the one that manages this artifact to ensure it's well ordered, is visible, is prioritized, and is got detailed information as well. And this information are being recorded on the user stories, which is where we have the documentation for Agile. And the Scrum team, which is product owner, the Scrum Master, and the dev team, then come together for the sprint planning meeting. so which is the first meeting for the sprints. And during this meeting, the team selects starting at the top as much as it can commit to deliver at the end of the sprints. So for instance, on this pillar backlog, we have 8 items in here, which ideally for a Scrum team, you might have like 150, whatever the size of the team, but this is just as an example. So we can see from this list, the top 3 has been prioritized. So which is what the team feels they can work on for the sprints, which could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever duration has been set for. So those items, the top 3, would then be moved, committed from the product backlog into the sprint backlog. So the sprint backlog is then generated here at the end of the sprint planning meeting. So whatever we're working on for that sprint, the requirement, the changes we're making are then in the sprint backlog, which are then broken down into tasks. And the tasks are the actions which the developers needs to work on to complete each of the user stories. It will make sense by the time we start the internship and then we start working on these things. It might look like, not very clear now, but as we get our hands on it, it will become clearer to us. So basically, at the sprint planning meeting, the team selects items from the product backlog into the sprint backlog, and then we break the user stories down into tasks. So those tasks are what needs to be done on each user story to get it complete. And at the end of the sprint, whatever we've committed, ideally, the plan is to complete it. Well, to be honest with you, not in all cases do we complete what we have in the sprint, but the idea is to be able to complete it, to be able to achieve the sprint goal. But yeah, we still have some odd cases, some blockers that we're able to resolve, some issues, that is beyond the team's capacity or what they can help. But yes, we get them once in a while. So basically the sprint backlog contains the changes, requirements, user stories that needs to be worked on during the sprints. So when we start the sprints, which like I said, could be 1 to 4 week sprints, depending on what the team or the business has adopted. So during that period of the sprints, which of course has a start date, we have a daily stand-up after every 24 hours. So every day, at every time, and the same location, we have a daily Scrum meeting, which is where the team come together to give updates on what they're working on towards achieving the sprint goal. So the Scrum Master as well during the sprints ensures the burn down chart, the metrics are being monitored to ensure, just to have an overview of how the team is progressing with the changes in the sprints. So that's one of the ceremonies as well, the daily Scrum. And at the end of the sprints, at the end of this duration of the sprints, could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4 weeks. The plan is to have a finished work, which is what we have here. The finished work, which is a workable software, which is a valuable software as well, which we are ready to ship out to release to the clients. And before then, there's got to be the sprints review, again, where the team comes together with the stakeholders. So the Scrum team will demo the changes they've worked on during the sprints. Stakeholders will give feedback on the changes, and those feedback, whatever feedback we've been given, we'll adapt that to the next sprints. And also the sprint retrospective as well. Again, the Scrum team, basically this is just for the Scrum team, no stakeholder on this call. This is for the product owner, Scrum Master, and the dev team come together to give feedback in terms of how the team has worked, what has worked well, the processes, the people, what hasn't worked well. And then we also create an action plan for improvements, because there will always be feedback, either good or bad. And whatever it is, the intention is for us to improve, for us to get better. And that action plan is then being adapted to the next sprint. So whatever has worked well, which is great, we carry on with those. And what hasn't worked well, we create an action to improve on that, which will be adapted to the next sprint. So this is basically this framework for Scrum, which includes the 3 roles, the 5 events, and the artifact as well. Daniela, you're mute. Yes, you're talking. Okay, we can hear you in case you're talking any. So these are the this is the framework for Agile.
Sorry. Before you move on, guys, just one question I wanted to ask. For this sprint planning meeting, is it where the team gathers requirements for the project and to also to understand the definition of done?
Yes and no. So for a sprint planning meeting, again, I've talked about time box. So this is time box as well. Maximum for the 4-week sprints is 8 hours. So for a 2-week sprint, it will be 4 hours. So during this ceremony, this is not where we gather requirements. That would have been done by the product owner. So he or she would have gathered the requirement from the executive, from the team, from the stakeholders, customers, users, clients, anyone, gathered the requirements already. And those requirements would have been, put together in the user story that the product owner would then list in the product backlog. So as a team, we already have the requirements already gathered. They've been prioritized already. Again, they would have been refined, or for some team, they refine during the sprint planning session. And the refinement means the team would then go through each of the user stories. The product owner would explain the requirement to them, what the change is about. The team will ask questions, the product owner will give answers to ensure the team understand what the requirement is. And then the team is able to estimate that requirement in terms of story points. So that talks about the efforts required to implement that change. So requirement gathering would have been done by the product owner before the sprint planning.
Sorry, okay. I'm so sorry to ask you. So in this sprint planning meeting,
yeah,
I know that is when they will now started taking user story from the product backlog, and they start committing to the sprint backlog.
That's
correct. So in this meeting, is it when we also discuss about the work done, where the team will do a poker to estimate the rate or the time will be spent on each product allocated to each thing?
Yeah, like I said, it depends on how the team works. For my team, for instance, in my office, we have that done before the sprint planning session. But as well, it could be done at the sprint planning session as well. It could be done as well. Yes, that's correct. It just depends on how the teams work. But yeah, at this point, because at the sprint planning session, we have to refine your stories. We need to have understood what we need to do at that point in time where they are being committed into the sprint backlog.
And sorry, how many hours can this meeting go for? An hour, 2 hours?
Yeah, so for, like we've talked about time box, so for the sprint planning session, for a 4-week sprint is 8 hours. So when we have a 2-week sprint, then it will be 4 hours sprint planning session, which is time boxed. But I need to say, I'm not sure any team sit on the call for 4 hours, which is why for my team, for instance, the refinement that you've mentioned, where you have to define your stories and do the estimation, we've done that before this planning session. So we don't have to be on the call for 4 hours, but it depends on how the team structure and but it's time box for 4 hours. It shouldn't be more than that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we have more hands up. Kayode, please.
All right, thanks, Adishola. So you mentioned that one of the attributes of the Scrum Master is to ensure continuous improvement of a project. So now, if any team member of the team or any team member leaves in the middle of the project, I know it can have negative impact on that project.
Yeah.
So as a Scrum Master, right? How do you, at the beginning of the project, how do you ensure, what do you put in place to ensure that that project moves on, that project, the lags and all that? Because I've worked in an environment where there's this, what's it called, between HR and the Scrum Master. So they believe it's the fault of the Scrum Master, and the Scrum Master pushes it back to the HR. So personal, I believe is meant to come from the Scrum Master. So how do you manage things like that from your experience?
Okay. Just point of correction. Sorry, Kayode. I'm not sure. Maybe I said that mistakenly. But with continuous improvements, is the whole team should be responsible for continuous improvement. It's just as a Scrum Master, you have to ensure that the team is improving, but everybody has a part to play in that. So about your question about a team member leaving the sprints or the project, that shouldn't be the problem of the Scrum Master, because anybody can leave the business at any point in time. A sprint is starting for 2 weeks, planning with 4 developers as part of the team, and unknown to the Scrum Master, somebody is leaving the following day or 2 days after. But we've planned the sprint for 4 developers. And for instance, we've committed like 20 user stories. So like one person will complete about 5 user stories in the sprint. So if one person leaves, which is part of the reasons why we might not be able to achieve the sprint goal, but that is not a business for, or it's not a fault of the Scrum Master, except the person has told the Scrum Master ahead of time that I'll be leaving end of the month. So in that case, we can plan on this person being available for just 2 days in the sprints or 3 days in the sprints or the project, but anybody can leave at any point in time. And we need to bear in mind as well as part of this Scrum process. And then things that can affect the sprint goal, new joiners would affect the sprint goal. I mean, new joiners, because when the person joins the team newly, they need time to catch up, understand the environment, the process. So that will slow them down. And as well, people trying to put them through as well would also slow down the team's performance. And leavers as well is also something that would also affect the team's performance. So it's something that is known, and it shouldn't be either HR or Scrum Master's problem, except we've known ahead of time and we haven't planned, or we haven't made resources available to replace the person that is leaving. Except that. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Kayode.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm not sure I pronounced your name properly.
Hi, it's Rose Collette, but Anya. I'm trying to understand how Agile and Scrum, like the similarities or the differences. Like, is it that if I'm using Agile, is Agile on its own? Like, is it that you're using Agile or you're using Scrum?
Okay.
Do you understand?
Agile, yes, yeah. I understand the question. Agile is a bigger umbrella, and Scrum is a subset of Agile. So saying that, for you, you can be Agile and not use Scrum, because Agile has so many subsets. You can be Agile and be using Kanban. So you can be Agile under the Agile umbrella, but not using Scrum. But you can't be Scrum without being Agile, if that makes sense. Because Agile is a bigger umbrella.
Mm-hmm,
yes, okay. Scrum is a subset of that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dele, please. Hi, Dele. You're mute. Yeah, I can hear you, God.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, God.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Yes, I just want some more explanation on backlog refinement and the burn down and up charts. So is this done by the Scrum Master or by the team? And could you just break it down a little bit more?
Okay, so the backlog refinement is one of the ceremonies, one of the events in Scrum. And what we do, what the team does at the backlog refinement is the Scrum team will come together, the product owner, Scrum Master, development team. So the product owner will go through each of the user stories in the backlog or the new changes that hasn't been discussed. It would give us a brief, details about what the change is about. This is what the team needs to do as a user story, as a client, I want to do this and that. So the product owner will explain that to the team. The team will ask questions to be clear on the requirements. So they need to understand what the change is about, what they have to do. They know what to do already, but you just have to be clear on the requirements as a developer. So once they are clear, then at that point in time, we do the planning poker, which is the estimation. So we estimate the efforts required. I mean, the development team, estimates the efforts needed to complete each user story. So the PO will pick the first story now. Maybe number one would explain as the clients, I want to do this and that, so that's this and that and that. So would explain that. Developers will ask questions, and once they are clear on the requirements, then they would estimate that change in terms of how much effort it would take them to get that complete. Is that clear?
Okay, so sorry. So the sprint backlog, is that different from backlog refinement?
Yes. Backlog refinement is an event, and the sprint backlog is an artifact. This sprint backlog contains these changes that the team is working on for that particular sprint.
And what is the refinement, please?
The user stories, the changes, the work that needs to be done to deliver a particular increment. For instance, so for instance, we want to build a house, is a bigger project. So everything that we need to do, that the Scrum team needs to do to build the house, the changes that need to be done will be in the product backlog. So the product owner would then prioritize that. Okay, so for the first sprint, we need to lay the foundation of the house. So every change that we need to do to lay the foundation for the house will be prioritized. So that would be the first changes, the first work to be done in sprint one, for instance. So those user stories that would help us to make a foundation will be in the sprint backlog, which is what the team will work on for that sprint duration. And at the end of the sprint, we need to be able to complete the house foundation. So that is the first, the first work that needs to be done for that sprint. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So where, excuse me, what I don't understand is, what do we do in the refinement? Is that when we do the daily Scrum 15-minute meeting?
No. Let me take you back to this slide where we talk about the events. So this Scrum is a 15-minute meeting every day. Where these teams come together to discuss. Yesterday, I worked on this, and that. Today, I'm working on this, and that. And I have this blocker. I have this impediment. So that impediment, on the call day, any other developer might say, oh, I can help you with this. We can catch up after the stand-up. Or if nobody is able to pick that up, as a Scrum Master, then you need to support that developer, that team member, to get that blocker removed so he or she can progress on what he needs to do for that day. So that's what we do at the daily Scrum.
Okay.
So it helps us to keep track of the progress of the project to ensure we are missing the sprint goal at the end of the sprint.
Then what about this backlog refinement? What is done here?
Yeah, so this is where the backlog is being ready. Backlog here talks about the product's backlog. So what has been prioritized by the product owner? So if I go back to this slide, so here we have 8 items in this product backlog now.
Yes.
And the top 3 has been prioritized. So the PO would then say, so for next sprint, we are working on this 1, 2, 3 user stories. So the PO will go through each of the stories one by one. So he or she will pick the first one, would explain as a user, as a client, I want to cook jollof rice so I can feed my family. So the team will ask questions. Jollof rice, do you want it with palm oil? Is it vegetable oil? Do you want, they will ask questions to understand what the customer wants for them to deliver on this particular user story.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I understand that now. Then what is the burn down up charts, please?
Yes, so the burn down, burn up charts is one of the metrics which the Scrum Master used to, is kind of something to measure the progress or the success of the team. We have 10 user stories in the sprints, and we need to complete these 10 user stories within the 2-week sprints. So the burn down chart, for instance, would show us is a graph. So on the right, on the vertical axis, it tells us number of stories in the sprints. So this will show 10 stories here, 1 to 3 up to 10. And on the horizontal is the time, which is 10 days for the sprints. Weekend exclusive. So this will be 10 days on the horizontal column. So at the end of each day, for us to have an ideal burn down chart, which will slope down in this way, bear in mind, this might not be always the case, but the intention is that at the end of the 10 days, the 10 user stories that we have in the sprints, we've been able to work on them. As we are working on one of the stories, it will be burning down. So day one, we completed one user story. So the slope will come down to show that after day one story has been completed. Then after day two, we reduced to 8 user stories. After day 3 is 7 user stories. So this will give us an ideal burn down chart. So this is what, as a Scrum Master, you would monitor to ensure this is day 5. We still have 10 stories in the sprints. Guys, what's happening? Is there any blocker? How can I help you? Just to check on the team to ensure, are we still on track? To ensure that after day 10, when the 2-week sprints will be ending, the team will be able to complete the work or the changes or the requirements in the sprints.
Okay, so, thank you very much.
Yeah, something for Scrum Master to keep track of the progress of the sprints.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think that should be everything. Oh, sorry, we still have more hands up. Wow. Let's just run through so we can cover the remaining slides. Sorry, Dele, is that new or have you? Hi, Dele. Okay, Adura, quickly, please.
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to ask you to explain more about the sprint review. Yeah, there's in the previous slide, there's something about product increment, velocity, and feedback. Yes.
Yeah.
Can you explain more about that, please?
Yeah. So at the sprint review, this is a ceremony that takes place on the last day, or maybe for some team, a day before the last of the sprints. So at this sprint review, what happens is what the team has worked on for the 10 days of the sprints or however long the sprint duration is. So we then come together with the stakeholders to demo, to show them what we've worked on, the increment that we've developed that we need to deliver to the clients. Okay, we want to lay a foundation. Then we then show the stakeholders, this is what we've done, this is the foundation of the house. And then the stakeholders will then look into what we've done to see, there's a crack on there, there's something missing there, there's something missing there. So we'll get feedback. So this is the product increments. This is what has been developed during the sprints. What we are delivering is the increments for that sprint. So that's the product increments, and the velocity of the sprints is, okay, for this sprint, what's the team's velocity? What have we been able to complete in terms of user stories? And then we get feedback from the stakeholders in terms of what the team has worked on, what we've demoed to them. We get feedback from the stakeholders to see, yeah, this is what we've developed. And then this is okay, this needs a little bit of adjustments. This needs to do a little bit of rework. And then we get feedback basically that we can then adapt to the next sprint if it's okay to be delivered, or if more changes needs to be worked on, or more work to be done on that change, on the user story. Does that help? Does that answer your question? Okay, I can't hear you anymore now. Hi, Jibril.
Hello?
Hi, can hear you.
All right, sorry, you can hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Just quick one, 2 questions. Someone asked about a team member leaving.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, because I've been hearing the word impediment. Is that an example? Can that be reported maybe during the sprint the meeting now as an impediment? Is that what they refer to as kind of impediment?
That wouldn't necessarily be an impediment because it's not blocking anyone. Well, because impediments will be something that is blocking you as a person from being able to complete. Maybe you have a user story you're working on, and then you need to access the particular environment, but you don't have the access to that. That's an impediment because it's impeding you being able to progress on your change, on what you've been assigned to work on. Or maybe this particular change, you don't have the skill sets to be able to get it done, then you have an impediment there because it's impeding you progressing. But a team member leaving could impact on the team's performance because that would impact on the stories that we've committed to complete for that sprint. Now that we have less resources to get the work done, it might mean we'll not be able to complete what we've committed to the sprints. So team member leaving or joining is not an impediment. It's just something that might impact on the team's performance.
All right, that's fine. Lastly, you know, I see the similarity between the 353 rules and then the framework. But I was expecting to see backlog refinement at the framework, but it's not there.
What's the framework for backlog refinements?
Is that what?
What's the framework for backlog refinements? It doesn't have a framework. It's just one of the events.
The last slide the last slide you are on.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I said I think there's a similarity between this framework and then the rule, the 353 rules.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm talking about the backlog refinement that I thought is going to reflect in that Scrum framework.
Okay, I get what you mean. It's because I think with the backlog refinement, which is why it's kind of in white compared to the others. And from my understanding, it depends on how the team works. And like I said, for my team, for instance, we have the ceremony as separate, where we refine the backlog. But you'll find for some teams, they refine the backlog as part of the sprint planning.
Okay.
So, yeah, but ideally, it's got to be done latest at the sprint planning meeting. So for my team, our sprint backlog comes somewhere in between, before the sprint planning meeting. And for some teams, it could be part of what they could do. They'll be doing at the sprint planning meeting. Yeah, but it's got to be done at some point because the team needs to be clear on the requirements and being able to estimate it in story points as well.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Quite a long list of questions now. We need to brush through quickly. Kehinde, you're mute. Okay. Neil Olawa.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go on.
Yes, I just wanted to ask if the product owner is the same as BA.
No, it's not. But he could serve as the same person. For my team, for instance, the product owner does the work of the business analyst. So it depends on the side of the project as well. So for some business, they have a separate business analyst, and for some projects, the product owner does the work of the business analyst as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just literally the question I wanted to ask, that was what the other lady just asked you. Okay. But what I always get confused is, so if we go in order, do you get the business analyst first and then do you get the Scrum Master? Because I kind of get the two of them mixed up.
No, you can still mix up the PO and the BA. Their work are still kind of similar because they deal with the data. The gathering of the data of the requirements. But Scrum Master is not the same as the business analyst. They are all different roles in the Scrum team. So business analyst is not a key part of the Scrum team.
Right.
Yeah, they kind of work outside the sprints because their work is to kind of gather requirements and then put those in the backlog, which again the product owner can do. So they don't work within the sprints for the business analyst, except their questions or the developer that's working on that story has questions, query about the requirement, and they can ask them, but they don't actually develop within the sprints.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Also, there's another question. So when do you actually start testing? Is it once you've got the product and you know what the customer wants, is that when you start testing the product?
No, before testing this, it's got to be developed first. So we did the sprints. So after the sprint backlog, after the sprint planning meeting, where we had the sprint backlog created, so the first person to work on that user story is the developer. So they would develop that change, So once they've done their developments and it's been matched up for testing, so the queue is the testers then pick up what has been developed and test that to sign it off to ensure that requirement has met their sequence criteria and definition of done as well. So they sign it off at that point in time. So it's also done in the sprints as well.
Right. So the test actually comes last. Well, technically.
Technically, yeah, within the sprint, because it's supposed to develop before the tester pick it up. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Tutalala. You're mute. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. Yeah, my question is the refinement backlog. Is it the same thing as the product backlog?
No.
It's the same process.
No, product backlog is an artifact, and a backlog refinement is an event. So if I take it back to this slide, so product backlog is an artifact here, which defines the product goal. So this is where we know we are building a house. That's the product goal. So everything that needs to do, every work that needs to be done to build the house in that story will be in the product backlog. So the requirements is an event, which is where the backlog is being ready. So all these requirements for backlog, we then discuss them one by one. POs answering questions, developers asking questions from the product owner, who then clarifies requirements for us. So that's done at the backlog refinements.
All right then, thank you.
So we get it ready for the sprint planning session meeting.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Abdul Ghaffar, quickly, please.
Okay, thank you. Well done. Please, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go on.
Okay. Please, on this slide, I want to ask what is Kaizen under retrospective on this particular slide?
That might be a terminology, but basically what that event does is where the team comes together for us to, look retrospectively into the sprints, and then the team will give feedback in terms of what has worked well for that sprint, in terms of people we've worked with, the processes within the sprints, what hasn't worked well. So the team will give feedback as well, and the action plan will be created to improve, or action plan on things to do for us to, on the feedback of the buttons that hasn't worked well, ideas in terms of how to improve on those in the new sprint. So that's basically what retrospective meeting the team does at that time.
Okay, so Kaizen is professional jargon in this respect.
Yeah, kind of.
Also referring to retrospective.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one. Please, secondly, I want to suggest a kind of suggestion that maybe we should try and delay our questions till the end of your
I was just going to say that. Thanks.
So that we'll cover this class in time, so that we won't be fagged out. I just suggest anyway.
I was just going to, because I think we still have about 6 more hands up. Apologies, guys, if you don't mind. We can just.
Some of our questions might be answered along the line.
Yeah. Just for us to be able to cover this. We're not far from finishing basically, but it's just so that we're able to cover that within the time. Apologies, guys. So we just, all the questions for now, and then we can run through what we've got left. On Kanban and the waterfall is not as much as what we've got covered already. If you don't mind, please. Thanks, guys. So now moving to Kanban, and like I said earlier, Agile being the bigger umbrella, where Scrum is one of the framework, so also is Kanban, is also a popular framework to implement Agile software development. And for Kanban, it requires real-time communication of capacity and full-time transparency of work. Again, we have that communication, which is collaboration, and the transparency as well, which we can relate to with Scrum as well. And for Kanban, the work items are presented virtually on the Kanban board, allowing team members to see the states of every piece of work at any time. Again, transparency, it's so important for Agile. And then the Kanban board is one of the key feature of Kanban, which for Agile, it's designed to help visualize work, to limit work in progress, and maximize the efficiency, which is the flow. And as well for Kanban, there's use of cards, which can be called user stories as well. So these cards, they are small enough to contain every piece of information for the team to develop and make the change to deliver increments, the columns and the continuous improvements to help technology and service team commit to the right amount of work and get it done. And for Kanban, the working limits is very, very important, which is a key feature for Kanban, because it limits the set of maximum amounts of work that can exist in each status of the workflow. So for Kanban, they don't have the ceremonies like we do with Scrum, and also the roles as well. They don't have the set roles like we have for Scrum. But what is more important is the team being able to limit the work in progress limits, to ensure you don't have too much work in progress, basically. And limit the amount of work in progress makes it easier to identify inefficiency, because when you have little in progress, you're able to manage that effectively. And also bottlenecks in the team delivery pipeline are clearly visible when the work in progress limits is limited. And this also improves throughputs as well, and reduce the amount of work that is nearly done by forcing the team to focus on a smaller set of tasks. So when we have a limited work in progress, the plan is to ensure everything in progress is being complete before, without having too much in progress, because when you have too much in progress, it becomes difficult to manage. And at that point, you have pending work here and there. But where there are limited work in progress, if there's a blocker, there's a bottleneck, the idea is for the team to ensure that blocker is being resolved, and then the team is able to progress on whatever the issue is before, starting up on the new requirements. And this helps to encourage the culture of done rather than having pending work on the board or pending work within the projects. And more importantly, the working limits makes blocker and impediments bottleneck visible. I've mentioned that. And the team can swarm around blocking issues to get them understood, implemented, and resolved. Again, it's just to ensure when we have a blocker as this Kanban team, this issue is the team's responsibility to ensure it's being progressed, to ensure the work in progress limits is not out of order. So this is an example of the Kanban board, just like the Scrum board as well. The team can set this up with the columns as they wish, or how best is going to work for the team. But the basic, columns would be the to-do column, the in progress, and the done. It could be named as the team wishes, but more importantly is the work in progress limits. So we can see in here that the columns for the tickets in progress. So the first column is the to-do, which could be the product backlog. So this is where we have all the changes, requirement to be done to achieve the product goal. So all those changes will be in the to-do column, and due today will be changes that the team would need to work on for that day, which is limited, obviously, for the number of team members to get the changes done. So this is planned for today. And for this column is what is currently in progress, which, as we can see up there, the limit has been set to 6. So for any point in time for this particular projects, for the particular team, they don't want to have more than 6 items in progress. At the moment, it's just 3, which is still within the limits. But the idea is so it doesn't exceed the 6 that has been agreed by the team. So the team will set the work in progress limits based on the available resources and the size of the project as well. So that's left for the team to decide. But the idea is whatever has been decided should not be exceeded. If, for instance, one of these change here is blocked, and rather than leaving it pended or leaving it blocked, the team member would all put their their efforts on there to ensure the blocker is being worked on and that ticket is progressed, rather than leaving it blocked, pended, or not able to complete. And whatever has been completed will be moved to the done column. So this is just a virtual representation of the Kanban board. And the emphasis basically is on the work in progress limits on them. So differences and similarity between Kanban and Scrum. Between these two, there is a very subtle difference. Like I said earlier, they are both subsets of Agile. But for Scrum sprints have starts and stop dates, whereas Kanban is an ongoing process. So I said Scrum has the ceremonies, the sprint planning session, the retro review, all of those, but we don't have those in Kanban. There is no sprints in Kanban. It's an ongoing continuous process. And team roles are clearly defined in Scrum. Like we've mentioned, product owner, the dev team, the Scrum Master, whereas in Kanban has no formal rules. But both teams are self-organized team in that they are able to get their work done. They have the resources, the expertise to get the work done. So that's similarity between the two teams, but there are no formal rules for Kanban. And a Kanban board is used throughout the life cycle of a project, whereas a Scrum board is cleared and recycled after each sprint. So for Scrum, for instance, we have a 2-week sprint. If at the end of that sprint, for some reasons, maybe for levers or any blocker, we couldn't complete one of the changes, we can't leave it in that sprint. It needs to be moved back to the product backlog, where again it will be prioritized by the product owner. And if that change is still a priority, then we'll commit it into a new sprint. But at the end of every sprint, the plan is to ensure any unfinished work is being moved back, is being reprioritized basically. But for Kanban, the board is just ongoing. It doesn't end, it doesn't close for Kanban. And a Scrum board has sets of tasks and strict deadlines to complete them, again, which is the Scrum duration and the sprint duration, sorry. And the Kanban boards are more flexible with regards to task and timing, and the tasks can be reprioritized, reassigned, updated as needed. So those are the few, difference between Scrum and Kanban. And also with the origin of Scrum is software development, while Kanban is lean manufacturing. Ideology, learn through experiences. We've talked about empirical process control, where we learn from experiences and make decisions based on what is known. And the team is self-organized, there's prioritization, and it reflects on wins and losses to continuously improve, which is where we talk about what went well, what did not work well for us to improve continuously. And for Kanban, uses reach out to improve work in progress limits. For the cadence for sprints for Scrum is regular fixed length. It could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 week, whatever has been adopted is fixed. It doesn't, ideally shouldn't change. But for Kanban, is a continuous flow. It doesn't, use the sprints approach. And the practices for Scrum, we've got the ceremonies, sprint planning, daily Scrum, review, retrospective. However, for Kanban, it visualizes the flow of work, limits work in progress, and it manage flow and feedback loop, as well as the roles. For Scrum, we have the 3 roles: product owner, Scrum Master, development team, whereas for Kanban, no required roles for those. So that's just a bit on Kanban. And lastly is the Waterfall project management, which is the second management project from Agile, sorry. So for Waterfall project management approach, it entails a clearly defined sequence of execution with project phases that do not advance until phase receive final approval. So with Waterfall, it's kind of rigid, which is the opposite of the Agile part. So I think, yeah. So for the Waterfall, this is the flow for that. It's got the various phases as well. Initial stages analysis, where the requirements are gathered, the planning session, requirements, the designs being developed. So the developer work to build the design, testers will test, maintain. So this process for Agile is so rigid that once we start out on a project, we need to go through each of these phases. So if somewhere along the line we realize something needs to change, we cannot make that change in here. We've got to complete this phase, and then that change will set in once we start all over again. So that's for the Waterfall. But for the Agile, within the sprints, we are able to analyze, define, design, test, and deploy. So this is just a 2 weeks duration, 3 weeks duration, 4 weeks duration. So we have the capacity, we have the flexibility to make change. So whatever we've identified here, whatever feedback we've identified within these 2 or the duration of the sprints, so for the next sprints, we can adapt that on there, which is a very short time for us to make changes. And also, even within the sprints as well, there is also the chance to make change as well, depending on the priority for that change. But with Agile, with Waterfall, that's so rigid. Whatever we've missed on the requirements, once we're on the design phase, we cannot go back to it. We've got to go through the entire phase before we can implement any change, which makes change not very frequent. I mean, it takes a while to take any change on board. So that's kind of the opposite for Agile. So again, obviously, whatever has an advantage will also have its own disadvantage, even though it looks rigid, but it still has its advantage as well. And in so it requires less coordination due to clearly defined phases, sequential process, because everybody knows what goes next. So after analysis is planning. After that is requirements. We can't go back from requirements and say we want to go back and analyze. No. And also, before we progress from analysis to planning, the analysis phase needs to be signed off by the stakeholders in this, I mean, which is kind of the disadvantage of that really, but it's just because the plan has been set out clearly, it requires very less coordination, which is an advantage for that. And a clear project phase helps to clearly define dependencies of work. Cost of a project can be estimated, requirements has been defined, because at this point we know what we are working on is being defined, so we can estimate on the projects on the cost, which, you know, for Agile, like we said earlier, there is no limits on the cost or the time. So, and for Agile Waterfall as well, better focus on documentation of designs and requirements, as well as the design phase is more methodical and structured before any software is written. So these are the advantages for Waterfall. And also its disadvantage is because it's harder to break up and share work because of the stricter phase, which you've mentioned earlier. Once something is missing at any point in time, we can't go back to make the amendments, but it's so hard to break up in between. There's a risk of time waste due to delays and setback during phase transition. And the reason for that is for each of the phases, there's got to be sign up from stakeholders. And, you know, sometimes difficult stakeholders might delay or ask questions or maybe not available, but it's just, we cannot progress to the next phase except it's been signed off at that point, which is where the time wasting comes in, which is a disadvantage for Waterfall. Additional requirements to fulfill realized phase team, whereas Agile encourages more cross-functional team composition. Communication is overheard during handoff between phase transition, which I said earlier. God help us, we have a difficult stakeholder, which, I mean, would not just sign up, but it's just part of what's the disadvantage for that. And the product ownership and engagement may not be as strong when compared to Agile, since the focus is brought to the current phase. So I think that's about the last slide. We finally got to the end of the training, and I believe we have some questions already. We still have about 5 more minutes without taking so much of our time. Hi, Josh.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, when you were answering the question of the lady the other time regarding the time of testing. So you mentioned that testing is done at the end, but I think from the principle of testing, there's one of the principles that says early testing, and obviously there is static testing. So in Agile, where is the place of static testing?
Not late the last, because the way it works within the sprints, as developers are developing, then they will need to pass that. Once development has been complete, then keywords will pick up that user story to test it. So not necessarily at the end of the sprints, but it's just for on a user story. Testers are the last person that work on that user story before it's being closed. So they work simultaneously within the sprints with developers as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, because before it can be tested by the QAs, it's got to be developed already. The change needs to have been done by the developer before the QAs can then pick that up. So they are the ones that will work last on that user story before is eventually closed. Hi, Mr. Deji.
Yeah, sorry, he mentioned static testing. So all this one will still be answered in the software testing class anyway. So as I think Adeshola mentioned about the requirements that the BA will write requirements. So as a tester, yeah, what you're talking about is that even before development, what will the tester be doing? They'll be doing the static testing of course. So based on that requirements, what the requirements has been written, you can actually start to test those requirements to ensure that it meets the what the user wants actually. So, but the application is what Adeshola is talking about, the testing of the application. You can't test application if it's not yet developed. But of course, like Josh, that you rightly mentioned, testing will start as early as possible, right? So you'll be testing the requirements even though the application is not ready. So we're still going to be talking about the role of a QA within the Agile anyway, even why the story is not yet done. What would the QA be doing? You see how kind of feature file to write and everything. So that will still come in the later part of this training. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Is that clear, Josh? I believe. Thank you. ID.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my question, and I'm sorry if you've answered this already, but what's the difference between the role of the project manager and a scrum master? Do the roles overlap in any way? And I don't know, how exactly does the role of a project manager fit into the agile methodology?
Ideally, in an agile environment.
Yes.
You want to go back on me? Sorry, dear. Yeah, sorry, thank you, because we have a bit of noisy background. So in agile, there shouldn't be a project manager. But like I said, in my business organization, for instance, we have a PM on our team, and their role basically is to manage the team. But it's the Scrum Master. Your role is to provide support, facilitate the ceremonies, to lead the team as well. So where the PM kind of manages the team, the Scrum Master does not manage the team, but he just supports, facilitate the ceremonies, provide support where necessary. But we don't manage the team basically. And in the ideal world, that should be part of the agile, but you still find in some organizations, we still have the PM on the team as well, which shouldn't be the case. But yeah, very often we get those as well. Is that okay, Dean? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Taya.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much, Adeshola. Excellent delivery. Two questions. We've elaborated on the advantages and disadvantages of the waterfall methodology, and with Agile, it's obvious. We're obviously studying Agile now and its advantages. Are there any disadvantages of Agile?
Well, I'm sure there will be disadvantage. Maybe I might not be able to say that before now, but yeah, it would have its advantage in. I don't know. Do you want to update strategy?
Yeah, to be honest, that question is not a question that you should ask a Scrum Master. To be honest. I think you will be better placed to ask a project manager, because a Scrum Master is trying to make sure that there's no job for a project manager, and vice versa, actually. So one thing that I can say is for a Scrum, or Agile, right? So because one thing that I said, which is also a good thing, is like you don't have a lot of documentation in Agile, and also that could also be disadvantage because sometimes you don't see end-to-end visibility of the whole lot. Actually, what you have in Waterfall, you see everything, even where they start and everything, and the budget. In Agile, you learn by precept actually. So that is one. So, and because that is basically one of the issues, and also because Agile, like Aleshola said, you don't have cost. It's one thing that it can go on and on like that, actually. So maybe that's a good thing for a Scrum Master anyway, because then it tends to be there like forever. So there, and also, even though also the project can go for a long time, also the project can also be shortened as well. It's vice versa. You can have a project, they say, oh, we found that because you adapt and inspect, because you're adapting and inspect, you found out that early that this project is a white elephant project, they shut it down. It might, for a waterfall or project management, might not happen that often actually, because you might already have a document signed that you've already everyone already said this is what's going to happen. Everything is kind of done. You have it. So if anything, that project will still be delivered, but it might not work anyway. So that's one thing. So those are what I can lay my hands on. The same way as Adesola as well, I am pro Agile, right? Okay. So, and it's difficult for Scrum Master also to see the negative of a tool they are evangelizing for, right? So technically, but those are the things that I can say. It's what, if you look at the feature of Agile and like budget, costs, and also time, it could also be the disadvantage as well. And that's one thing I can say. So, and also forming the team, so everything is so agile. When things are so agile, it's easy for you to be fragile as well. Do you get it now? So there are a lot of change. You see a lot of moving parts as well. So, and because it's so flexible, then people tend to choose and mix, right? So because of that, that's what you have in the whole world now. You see a lot of mix of different agile frameworks. Actually, now you see Agile, mixing Agile with Waterfall, and you see Scrum and Waterfall be mixed together, so becoming Scrum like that. So it's sometimes if you're not careful as a Scrum Master, you might be confused. Your team also might be confused what you are doing. So that's where you need to, a training like this helps you to stay focused, and that's why Agile also has got his own principle as well. Is like Prince2 has got his own framework. As a framework, Agile has got his own framework that you need to follow. So that's what I can say. Yeah.
Okay. And the other question is, are there any simple recommended reading material in Agile, for Agile?
The Scrum Guide would help a lot. Okay. And scrum.org, you have lots of information on there as well.
Scrum.org.
Yeah, scrum.org.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Hi, Wumi. Okay, you're on mute, Wumi, in case you're talking. This should be okay.
Hi, the show.
Yeah, go on, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's been amazing. Can I just quickly draw attention back to the Agile Scrum framework? So you mentioned that the product owner will be getting the requirements from the stakeholders, executives, and them. Yeah, right. Right. So where is that specific to just Scrum, or does the BA? Because I mean, information gathering, processes, and all that. That's part of the BA's role, which is what I'm doing. But I was just wondering, is that a different set of information gathering by the product owner from the executive stakeholders and team and users, or does the BA come in there as well?
Yeah, thanks. Like I said earlier, this is like the product owner's role is it contains the business analyst role as well, which is why for some teams, you don't have the business analyst, because what the PO does as well is similar in terms of information gathering from the executive teams, stakeholders. So it's similar to what a business analyst would do. So I think where the BA comes in is maybe what the product is a large project, and not to overwhelm the PO, because the PO are the ones that would contact with the clients, which is the voice of the client, the business, to the team. So the BA does similar thing as well. So where you have the BA, they also do that. But where you don't have the BA, the product owner does similar role. Is that clear, Wumi? Okay. I think you've gone back on mute. Hi, Adira.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, enough. Okay. Now, sorry, the first time, well, I'm totally new to this. So when I first got the introduction and they were talking about product owner, so it was quite fascinating. So I'm thinking product owner, is it a job? Is it somebody that works in the same company as a Scrum Master, as the development team? Is it just a job title, or does it have another? I was just so curious about it. Can you tell me more about the product owner, please?
Yeah, that's fine, Adria. So product owner is part of the Scrum team. So they also work together with the Scrum Master and the dev team as well. And as you can see on this, framework, the product owner, as the name implies, they are the ones that owns that project. They are the voice of the client, the voice of the business. And their role is a very respectable role because their opinions, they are the ones the business has possible to make a decision to build that product. So their suggestions, their ideas, opinions are to be very, very respected. They are a very respected person in the business, basically. So they are the ones that will contact with the clients, the customer, stakeholders, or whoever, to understand the change. What exactly is this project all about? So they need to have a good understanding of the project, and they are the ones that will get the user stories, the requirements that will be in the product backlog, which is what the team will then work on to develop and deliver the goal of the project. Does that make sense, Adria? So they ensure the backlog is clearly defined, the requirements are clearly defined, they've been prioritized because they understand the projects as well. They know what needs to be prioritized. So we need to work on this before this and that. So they also prioritize the backlog and ensure what the team are working on. And as part of their role, they want to get the best out of the Scrum team. So to maximize value out of the team, which sometimes clashes with the Scrum Master because the Scrum Master wants to kind of, ensure the team are working at a sustainable pace to ensure, there is no distraction, but the POs, they have a requirement from the clients, they want to get it done now and then, but the Scrum Masters will then kind of, push back a little bit to see, do we have capacity for this change? Do we have this in progress? Are we changing, prioritization or something like that? So it's just basically a role as part of the Scrum team as well.
Okay. Thank you. So it's like a job title for them.
Yeah, that's the job title, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you like a Scrum Master, a developer, a product owner, business analyst, yeah, it's just similarly. Yeah, thanks guys. I think we've run over time. We've got to answer again. Adria, I think you've just spoken now. I'm not sure if you still have your hand up or yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Adeshola.
Yeah.
This question is for Mr. Deji.